Without any further ado, I give the floor over to Bel. Please lead the panel. Thank you.
Dear Professor Bekic, dear students, I hope you can hear me well.
Yes.
Let me please greet you then on behalf of the audience and obviously on behalf of this last panel. I must admit that I don't consider myself being an expert on Cold War history. And on the other hand, on a practical perspective, I have 3 kids that will likely get home in the next hour, which may cause some noise or turbulence here, but I will try to manage this situation if so. So I would suggest that we start by following the order proposed in the conference program. So first we are going to listen to Shimon, if I may address you by using your first names. Then your lecture will be followed by Jeff, and then comes Murat from Turkey and Neli. 3 of you are familiar with the setting as you are affiliated with Corvinus University of Budapest, but are most welcome to HAWN from London. So please, Shimon, just proceed. And I think you have about 20 minutes that should be respected. I'm going to mute myself, and I would suggest that everyone else. We can see your shared screen quite well.
Thank you very much, Professor. And I'd like to thank this opportunity to Professor Bekic as well. So my name is SZILVÁSI. I'm the coordinator of the Cold War History Center, and I'm also a PhD student in Corvinus University. So my presentation is about the Arctic region, which nowadays gains more and more attention, and a lot of people, experts, compare it to the Cold War era, that a so-called new Cold War can emerge nowadays with China, Russia, USA, and also other countries in the Arctic. So my topic is Mikhail Gorbachev's Murmansk speech, which was a speech made by the Premier of the Soviet Union in the 1st of October 1987. And Murmansk is the biggest city in the Arctic still nowadays. And during the Cold War, it was the center of the Soviet submarine fleet, and also the home of the second fleet of the northern fleet of the Soviet Union, and it is the only harbor that is unfrozen during the whole year. So this is a strategic city, and that's why the Premier made his speech in this city. The speech laid out some basic foundations and basic principles in the late Cold War period, when the huge changes in the Soviet Union began with Glasnost and Perestroika, and also Gorbachev's new foreign policy that the Soviet Union should cooperate with the USA on arm reductions and to ease the tensions later in the history. So I would like to stress only 3 points from his speech. One is environmental protection and international cooperation. The second one is going to be the opening, open for international travel and passage of the Northern Sea Route, which is a maritime sea route next to the Russian coastline. And the last one is he proposed a nuclear weapon-free zone and the so-called peace zone in the Arctic. So the first one is going to be proposed nuclear-free zone, which still is an issue and a debate that whether it could be possible or not, because according to Cold War Arctic historians and other professionals, the Arctic was the most concentrated area concerning nuclear weapons, thermonuclear weapons, and also if you see the concentration of nuclear submarines that they were operated under the Arctic and constructed espionage and other reconnaissance missions. So as today there are 5 zones which are nuclear free, and the Arctic could be the 6th one. And Gorbachev not just proposed that military activity should be reduced concerning submarines and international ballistic missiles and other nuclear armed vessels, but he also stressed the other part, which is the nuclear waste and how to contain those environmental hazards. So in this map, you can see the main sites where, as today now as well, there are nuclear waste sites inside Russia and the Arctic. And you can see it's not just pollution from unused nuclear plants, but also submarines and also other kind of weapons, and they were just left behind because the Soviet Union in 1991 collapsed, and after the Russian Federation faced so immense economic change and radical and fast change and economic depression, that there is no finances for this huge second fleet and the Russian Navy, and a lot of the vessels were just simply disposed. But the nuclear waste problem is not constricted to Soviet Union, because the United States also had air bases in Greenland, as it has today in Tool base, and there are also post Second World War bases that were also abandoned in these barrels in Greenland, in abandoned airbase. And there is also a huge debate between Greenland, Denmark, and the United States that who should be responsible for clearing those wastes, because the United States is kind of reluctant, and he tries to put this task to Denmark, and Greenland also is asking Denmark to do it. But as you can see, a few years ago there was a big contribution, like 118 million kroner, or 30 million US dollars to fix this issue. But this is a still ongoing problem. So it was a huge leap, but there are still things to do, and it is not a complete clearance or cleaning. Another issue was also in Greenland, when there was a nuclear weapon carrier B-2 bomber, which was crash landed. This is an actual photo of that. And it carried 4 nuclear bombs. And according to the official release documents, one nuclear bomb was never found, and it's theoretically still under the ice. And another project also from the USA that it was called Project Iceworm, which was tunnels under the ice of Greenland, underground bases. But the construction was also abandoned due to statical issues of the ice. And in that site also there was a lot of waste, not nuclear, but like regular waste, oil, kerosene, and so on, that is still polluted. But back then in the 50s and the 60s, it was thought that ice will cover that for the end of time. But now with global warming, those sites were also melting and revealing those dangers. Okay, and I was saying that the ice is rapidly melting. And this map shows you clearly that it will recede in every summer, in every September, because September is the lowest point in the ice melting. And in the end of the century, it could be possible that we will have ice-free summers in the Arctic. So the other proposal by Gorbachev was the Northern Sea route opening. As you can see in the left picture, there are numerous sea routes in the Arctic. They are not new, as some media reports says. They were been hundreds of years before, but due to the ice, it was not used or barely used, mostly by Russia. And in the 18th century, the explorers. So Gorbachev proposed that the Northern Sea route should be opened for international traffic, as it was only used, the exception of 1960s, by Russia, because this sea route is inside Russia's territory. Russia's maritime borders. So during the Cold War, it was naturally there was no possibility of using that. And why it is important? Because you can see that next to the Suez Canal route, it could save 40% of shipping time and a lot of costs, but it also has a lot of dangers, uncertainties. There is still ongoing debate now by huge shipping companies like the Danish Maersk and also Chinese shipping companies, that is it a viable route now, or we have to wait more to open the ice and to use this route. And after the fall of the Soviet Union, it was in 2009 when the first international vessel sailed through. It was a German vessel. And nowadays, it's also open, but there are restrictions by the Russian government. There is also called the Sea Route, Northern Sea Route Administration, which controls this route, because if you sail through, you need Russian icebreakers, special type of vessels that will clear the ice before you. Without them, it's impossible to use with regular ship this route. So if you can assess it from Gorbachev's view, this goal was partly managed and accomplished. Also, international cooperation in the Arctic. I have to say that next to the Arctic Council, which predecessor was an environmental forum initiated and started by Canada, it was still cooperation in the 1970s, in 1973 actually, when the first international agreement was signed by the Nordic countries and the United States and the Soviet Union as well. And it was what was about? It was about the protection of polar bears, hunting, killing, and capturing them, except for scientific reasons. It was abandoned only in the Arctic. And that was a major point to establish cooperation. And later on, environmental issues and also other issues came into the picture, as well as indigenous people, because indigenous people was also another aspect of Gorbachev. What he said, that those people need a forum, need a place to hear their voice. And it is a great accomplishment that the Arctic Council also has a different kind of indigenous people groups like Sami or other council inside that. And it is important to stress that this forum is not like the United Nations or some other international organization. This is a discussion forum. But during the years since 1996, there is 4 treaty, 4 agreement that is legally binding, and it's very important to have these, and we are looking forward to have more in the upcoming years. So the Arctic Council is based on the idea that those countries you can see in the map with darker blue, it's the permanent countries, which are the Arctic countries, and it's a permanent status. You cannot go in and out. And with lighter blue, it's the observer status countries, which can also participate in meetings and share their opinions, and the most important from them is China. Okay, and confrontation to cooperation. This is also very interesting that during the Cold War, in the second part of the Cold War, Russia and China were great tensions. There was also a part and the Third World War happened in the border conflicts between the Soviet Union and China, and today they are cooperating in the Arctic by using the Northern Sea route, by jointly invest and use liquefied natural gas plantations, and you can see in this picture with the Russian bear and its ship. And also China is looking for that sea route I've been showing, because China realizes that is investment with proper technical background, supported by the Russian icebreakers, they can manage to have this LNG gas supply for China's growing energy needs, and also maybe in the future container shipping could happen in this sea route. It's also I have to stress that China is a new actor in the Arctic, and he says that because this is mankind common right to be there and to how to say use its resources, but China keeps a pledge that he will not interfere in territorial claims and such. So to assess all what I have said, and I want to stress that those three questions and hopes that Mikhail Gorbachev says in Murmansk, we can see that except the nuclear-free zone, the other parts, the cooperation, the Northern Sea route opening, and partly the nuclear waste containment happened. And this 20, 30 years since that cooperation that he envisioned, and also other people. So I also have to stress that there are other people, Norwegian people and Danish people who stressed cooperation, not just Gorbachev, but it was important because Gorbachev was the leader of a superpower, and if he has such goals, then it could be articulated in a higher level than with other countries. And also important that in the future and as today, because Russia is have the rotating chairmanship of this Arctic Council. A few weeks ago, Antony Blinken and Sergei Lavrov met in Iceland. So Russia is a great actor even as today. And I don't believe that there is a second Cold War emerging there, but the strategic position of the Arctic now, due to the global warming, it's also increasing. And environmental protection should be the utmost importance to bear in mind for cooperation in the Arctic. Okay, that was my presentation, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Shimon. Let me please ask you a question. It's a rather administrative one, but how previous panel chairs responded to or managed the time? Because I didn't want to interrupt you, but you went a bit over these 20 minutes, and I would like to be fair. So if that's the norm, then I don't mind if all of you talks a little longer than should do, but
let me join in with the unfortunate no, because we are well beyond schedule. So of course we don't want to shorten the presentations, but definitely not longer them. So they should be 20 minutes the maximum. But we kindly asked the presenters already at earlier panels as well to be even shorter than 20 minutes if possible. If not, then 20 minutes is okay, but nothing more. So after what we have been doing at 15 minutes, we make a polite warning, I mean, vocally saying that, excuse me, you have 5 more minutes. So that's how we did it. So that's what I suggest doing right now.
Okay. Then this is my task, I think, or responsibility. So Jeff, please go ahead and we are listening to your presentation on the U.S. foreign policy establishment and Boris Yeltsin's policy.
Yes, give me a quick second. All right. Please confirm you can see my screen. Wait. Give me a quick second here. Sorry, I have never used Teams before, so my computer doesn't like it very much. The gremlins are out in force today, it seems. Okay. That should have done it. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, everyone who has stuck around here for the last panel. My name is Jeff HAWN. I'm at the London School of Economics. My focus, my area of focus is the Russian constitutional crisis of 1993, and I'll be presenting today on how the United States came to see Boris Yeltsin as the key to Russian democracy. I'll try to do this in a timely manner, as I know we're quite behind schedule. So, Yeltsin, the Democrat. Was Boris Yeltsin a Democrat? I do not believe he was. He was not a dissident in the traditional sense, nor was he someone who was an activist outside the power structure of the Soviet Union. Rather, he was a product of the Soviet system, who had joined various political movements throughout his career as a means to advance that career and enhance its own power. He only joined the Communist Party of the Soviet Union in 1960, having had no previous association with the Communist Party. He never joined Komsomol, and he was never in the Pioneers. He gradually rose through the Soviet hierarchy, becoming first secretary of Sverlovsk, essentially the regional governor. Eventually, during Gorbachev's reforms, he was promoted to first secretary of Moscow. However, he was kicked out of the Politburo in 1987 due to clashes with his co-workers and other party members over policy. It's debatable how much of this was ideologically motivated and how much of it was personal animosity. Ultimately, though, he leveraged this being kicked out of an unpopular party to be elected first to the Congress of People's Deputies of the Soviet Union, and then later Congress of People's Deputies of the Russian Soviet Federated Socialist Republic, from which he was elected president of Russia. He resigned his party membership in 1990. And then finally in 1991, following the August coup, helped to facilitate the end of the USSR. Throughout his political career, Yeltsin embraced multiple paths, but ultimately he was the most able to encapsulate a populist rhetoric to build a base of support. He leaned heavily into what grievances Russians had towards the Union state, namely the fact that Russia did not have any republic-level organizations like its own Communist Party. This, in practice, meant that Russia did not have anyone to advocate for it at the Union level, and Russia often felt that it was subsidizing the other Union republics. So, Yeltsin was also a strong critic of elites and party privilege. And he was someone who spoke in absolutes, simple absolutes, while the more thoughtful Gorbachev often dithered and changed course throughout his reforms. As I previously mentioned, if there was any winner to the August coup, it was Boris Yeltsin. With Gorbachev cut off in the Crimea, Yeltsin became the visible leader against the coup and the spokesman for Russia to the world. Following the coup, there is substantial evidence in the documents and sources I've reviewed that a new confederated union might have been salvaged under Gorbachev's leadership. This was actually the preferred course of action for many of the republic-level leaders. However, during the Belezhnov Conference in Minsk, which initially was convened to discuss the sharing of fuel resources during the winter, Yeltsin and his team proposed formally dissolving the Soviet Union and replacing it with the Commonwealth of Independent States. In practice, what this meant was that Gorbachev essentially lost his power. So, having kicked Yeltsin out of office in 1987, Yeltsin got his revenge by essentially destroying the Soviet Union. So, how did the United States Foreign Policy Administration view Boris Yeltsin? Initially, not very well, especially the Bush administration. Yeltsin's challenge to Gorbachev was extremely inconvenient for the U.S. national security interests because Gorbachev was delivering on things that mattered to President Bush and his national security team. And in the words of Brent Scowcroft, Yeltsin was a pure opportunist. He was a Democrat because it was a way to get out, and he was fundamentally after power. Now, despite this negative assessment and the support of Gorbachev, Bush and his team were at their core pragmatic realists who, as Bush put it in his diary, were willing to dance with whoever was on the floor. It's important to also contextualize where the Bush administration was at this point in his presidency. Bush himself was a highly pragmatic, managerial, incremental person. He did not like to wax eloquently about grand visions or ideologies, but rather focused on measured, tangible goals. He was also facing a great deal of domestic instability, as well as a series of international crises. Most notably of these international crises was the Iraq War, the first Iraq War rather, which came less than a year before the Soviet Union began to dissolve. For someone who so valued stability, this was an inherent threat to Bush's worldview. On the domestic front, Bush faced a entrenched recession and growing instability within the U.S. House of Representatives, which was a vital component of getting both his foreign and domestic agenda enacted. Actually, in 1989, House Speaker Jim Wright, Democrat from Texas, was forced to resign over ethics violation. Wright's resignation shook Washington and was believed to be the work of a single individual within the Republican Party, Newt Gingrich, who was aggressively attacking the entrenched structures in Congress that had previously served to create a more cooperative and bipartisan government. After the Soviet Union's collapse, Bush did begin to interact with Yeltsin, but he continued to focus on measurable, attainable goals. While things like human rights and equal rights to minorities were given lip service, as you can see in the items here that Bush outlined as his primary foreign policy goals for the new Russian state, control of nuclear weapons was the primary priority. What was happening in the United States also affected how much aid the United States was able to give to the new Russian state. While there was much talk of a new Marshall Plan and Yeltsin even calling for a new Marshall Plan, no substantial investment from the United States was forthcoming or even possible. Bush, in his general managerial style, had appointed well-seasoned insiders to key cabinet positions. Among these were Nicholas Brady as Secretary of Treasury and James Baker as Secretary of State. James Baker had previously taken point on all Soviet and then Russia-related issues. However, when Russia began asking for substantial financial aid and debt relief, the Treasury Department, which was concerned about the U.S. fiscal deficit, was austerity focused by its nature, and were strict adherents of Washington consensus economic theory, asserted itself and refused to back substantial aid. Bush sided with Brady, and Baker, not wanting to rock the boat, chose instead to focus on nuclear weapons control. Although Baker did put together a donor conference in Washington, D.C. in January of 1992 that managed to raise $24 billion, it was for the entirety of the former Soviet states. Ultimately, and much of it would ultimately go to service the Soviet debt, which Russia took on its entirety. That amounted at the time to about $55 billion US dollars, and no forgiveness or deferment on those loans would be forthcoming. At the same time, no one in the Bush administration focused or even thought about the need for institution building. Indeed, Yeltsin, having destroyed the Soviet Union, essentially left question marks in its place. So building foundations of a functioning democracy were not a priority for him. Although he would later say this was a mistake, at the time it is likely that he wanted to keep the ambiguous state of affairs that gave him room to maneuver. As president, he controlled the Council of Ministers and the vast state bureaucracy, an excellent place to build a new power base through patronage, which he proceeded to do. Yeltsin essentially was acting as a very bad Democrat, but a very good party boss. He knew how to build these personal relationships, and he knew how to exploit the ambiguities that existed within the new Russian system. Russia at this time was still being governed by the Constitution of the Russian Soviet Federated Socialist Republic, which was originally drafted in 1979, and although it had been amended heavily, was an extremely cumbersome and unwieldy document. At the same time, Yeltsin's economic policies, which were strongly advised by both American independent contractors, the IMF, and the US Treasury, led to a complete economic collapse in Russia. The GDP contracted 46% as compared to the 30% contraction experienced by the US during its Great Depression. Inflation essentially wiped out the currency, and people's savings vanished overnight. The small but vocal Soviet middle class, which had been vital to the glasnost and perestroika reforms, essentially ceased to exist. A new class of wealthy oligarchs proceeded to create wealth, but then rather than reinvest it into the country, as had been hoped for by these reformers, took it out of the country and squirreled it away. You can see this 10,000 ruble note from 1992. That would probably buy you a loaf of bread in the morning and half of a loaf by the afternoon. So in 1992, Bush lost his bid for re-election to the Clinton administration. Clinton, in many ways, resembled Boris Yeltsin in that he came from a more rural constituency within his nation. He was a pragmatic, he built himself as a pragmatic populist. So, and he came into, but Clinton came into office with very little foreign policy experience. He confided in his primary Russia advisor, Strobe Talbot. You can see him there. He's the guy with glasses. This is the only photo I could find of them together. That he feared Russia would go bad on him and cause a major destabilization in Europe and Eurasia. Clinton, in many ways, was even more limited in what he could do for Russia than Bush had been. He ran a campaign focused on the middle class. He had a largely domestic agenda. And there were many questions being raised in both the American Democratic Republican parties and in various media outlets about why the United States should now be giving money to the country that until recently was its arch enemy. George Stephanopoulos, one of Clinton's key advisors, allegedly told Talbot in '93, "There'll be no new legislation for Russia and no new money." At the same time, Clinton solicited advice on how he should deal with Russia, and the response from the world was almost universally overwhelming. Yeltsin had not just confided himself to cultivating relationships within Russia, but had done so on the global stage and had been doing so since he first came to international prominence in 1987. Now, some of the people who were strong advocates of Yeltsin and his administration included the last foreign minister of the Soviet Union, Edward Shevardnadze, John Major, Margaret Thatcher. Richard Nixon, former US president, had actually been instrumental in Clinton using the Russia issue to bolster his foreign policy credentials during the campaign. Helmut Kohl, the Chancellor of Germany, and Robert Strauss, the most recent US ambassador, were just some of the people who strongly advocated full support for Yeltsin. These were not the only people pushing this narrative either. Andrei Kozyrev, Yeltsin's foreign minister, consistently reiterated the dangers of what would happen if Yeltsin lost power, and he did so in the most extreme terms. In December 1992, during the Conference of Security and Cooperation in Europe, he went on a tirade about Russia's special status and to national interest. This led several of the delegates to wonder if he was speaking under duress or if there had been a coup in Moscow. In fact, he came back in the second part of his speech and announced that he was just giving the world a taste of what would happen if the Democrats, himself included, lost power. He also frequently communicated the dangers of Yeltsin's primary opposition, which at this point had become Vice President Rutskoy, and the chairman of the Supreme Soviet of the Congress of People's Deputies, Ruslan Khasbalatov. There was also the Yugoslavia conflation. Now, American foreign policy experts and key figures began to conflate what was happening in Yugoslavia with what could potentially happen in the Soviet Union. Brent Scowcroft allegedly saying in 1991 during a National Security Council meeting, "We don't want another Yugoslavia." Talbot reiterated and even expanded on this. So when he wrote his initial memo on what U.S. policy towards Russia should be. Essentially, the warning was that if Yeltsin lost power, Russia would either fall into a Yugoslavia-style civil war, except with nuclear weapons, or it would give rise to a new dictatorship that would put the Thank you. So just to wrap up, ultimately, Yeltsin launched his constitutional coup of 1993, in which he suppressed the Congress of People's Deputies and forced the enactment of the 1993 Constitution. This is the Constitution which would continue to govern Russia until July of 2020 and facilitate the rise of Vladimir Putin. The United States fully supported Yeltsin in this. The United States continued to support Yeltsin, although there was some hesitation for the closeness as the slaughter in Chechnya continued to grow. Well, ultimately, the U.S. saw support of Yeltsin as the only way forward for its Russian policy. In my conclusion, this is what I have found in my research. The US came to see partnership with Yeltsin as indispensable only gradually, but this shift was helped in no small part by Yeltsin's own political talents and the inadequacies within the US government. It is with some sad irony that in their desire to support Yeltsin so that Russia would not go bad, the US ensured that no institutional safeguards arose to protect against a new autocrat. The economic reforms championed by US officials and economists destroyed the Russian middle class, eliminating the very foundation of the Russian democratic movement. These ingredients ensured that Yeltsin left office. The path for revanchist new administration was clear. And that's my presentation.
Thank you so much. So I think the discussion part is scheduled after we have listened to all the four of you. So please, DEREGÖZÜ, if I may ask you
Yes.
to proceed with your presentation.
Of course, of course. Let me share with everybody. Is it visible in your screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Yes, okay. I'm starting very quickly. Okay, everybody hears me. I start. Good afternoon and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I am Murat and I am from Republic of Turkey. Today I'm going to talk about post-Cold War geopolitics of Turkey. Before I proceed, let's very shortly have a look at my outline. In order to better grasp the post-Cold War geopolitics and shifts of Turkey, I must give very briefly some background information concerning pre-Cold War period. However, today one of my fundamental motives is to make clarification and separation between geopolitics and geography. Of course, I don't have any bias or doubt that people are not familiar with this, but it's always very nice to clear and refresh the minds. Later, I will briefly have a look at we will have a look at the major world events that have shaped and have been shaping Turkey's geopolitics, and end of the Cold War was itself is included. So what is geopolitics? Geography versus geopolitics. Are they similar? For very shortly, I don't want to run out of time, and that's why the very short answer is they are not similar. They are very separated. But of course, geopolitics is using geography. Geography and politics are one of the main resources of the geopolitics. However, details are inside the elements of the geopolitics, because history and the culture are the rest and one of the main components of the geopolitics. So the the geography has three different categories: that physical geography itself, human and economic geography, local geography, and geopolitics have three different categories: elements, that the stable elements, one like such as that any country, certain countries' geography, the changing elements, population, economy, military technology, and the cultural impact, and etc., and the time. So overall, what I would like to say here is that the geographic location and the geopolitical location of any the certain country is different. Of course, they are interconnected. But what is geopolitics? To me, geopolitics is like chessboard pieces. It's like chessboard, and the pieces are like the elements of the geopolitics, the changeable ones. You can lose anytime. Where the lines, the borders where you put your pieces are like geography. They are stable. But of course, I do not want to create misperception that in the international system, the countries have equally some conditions. So another very critical part of understanding geopolitics is to look at any country on a physical Earth globe. As you can see, I have my own I brought from home to show everybody. Therefore, I advise everybody to have an Earth globe on your table to assess better any country's geography with the information of political elements, that we can have assumptions about any country's future moves or political moves, because geopolitics is generating options by looking at different elements. So this is the Turkey's where it's located. So the neighbors of Turkey. This part is a little bit boring, but it's very essential to have a look at. Turkey in overall have 8 different neighbors. Turkey is sharing its land borders with 8 different neighbors. If I name them, Bulgaria, Greece, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Lebanon, Armenia, and Georgia. So the physical geography of Turkey, there are several definitions and the cliche sentences. I'm not going to bother audiences with these cliche sentences, but Turkey is a peninsula country. It has 2 straits, Bosporus and Dardanelles, and the landmass which is located in the Asian side of Turkey is called Anatolia or the Asia Minor. So this, as you can see, the city Erzurum and the rest, the white part of Turkey is Eastern Anatolian Plateau, which is minimum over 2,000 meters from sea level, which serves as a natural shield. And I would like to, what I would like to find out from this presentation, and to tell that to everybody, that the research question and hypothesis. Research question. My research question is why the Turkish geopolitics often change, and with this research question, I have 2 different hypotheses. That the first one, the significant world events have a decisive impact on Turkey's geopolitics as well as on foreign policy, and Turkey's behavior reaction alters depending on world conjuncture and her capacity. The hypothesis 2, the post-Cold War period has created more security risk than bipolar world system. Turkey has become NATO member in 1952. However, before affiliation to the defense umbrella throughout the interwar period, Turkey has maintained her neutrality and adopted peace at home, peace in the world concept. However, one fact was pushing Turkey into NATO, that it was Stalin's claims over a large landmass of Turkey and the Straits. Let me show to map. Let's have a look at the map. As you can see, these are the Hankars. The cities northeastern part of Turkey were Joseph Stalin was claiming this land mass. So this is the virtual version of Stalin's claim from 1945 to 1953. These cities were asked to hand over to Soviet Union. So normally the border between Russia and Turkey were determined by Moscow Treaty, which was signed in 1921 by Lenin and Atatürk. But the Stalin was revised this treaty. So Turkey that time did not have so much options, and there was almost one option, that joining NATO. But of course, after paying the price, Turkey paid some heavy price, we may talk later on. And this map shows the current NATO member countries, which altogether NATO has 30 members, and the most recent member is the North Macedonia. Geopolitics throughout the Cold War. Due to the status quo protectionism, during the Cold War, Turkey had very passive stance on world events. It relied on American defense system, therefore there was not many original foreign policy moves except Balkan Pact, which was signed in 1953 between Yugoslavia, Greece, Romania, and Turkey against Soviet threat. And the second one was Baghdad Pact in 1955 between Turkey, Iran, Iraq, United Kingdom. During the Cold War, Turkey's geopolitics could be called as an easy period because the bipolar system led by two powerful leading countries almost left no option for weak states to take. Shortly, just choose your side and obey the rules. The leaders of these groups will predict the rest. During this period, there was an exception that Turkey left. Turkey decided to take action by herself that carried out Cyprus peace operation in 1974. Therefore, in Turkey, we always say that the geopolitics in Turkey, the geopolitics or the Cold War years throughout Cold War were lost decades. However, Turkey elites were caught unprepared to the dissolution of Soviet Union. New states have emerged. Many of them were in the Central Asia and Eastern Europe and the Caucasus. And new wars occurred. Balkan War between 1992 and 1995. Issues like Nagorno-Karabakh appeared. Some other problematic areas between Greece and Turkey, Turkey and Iran, Iran and Syria, Turkey and Syria, Turkey and Iran, and Turkey between Turkey and Iraq will remain unsolved in this period. Post-Cold War era for Turkey was quite difficult time because it did not have strong economy to influence Central Asia or fill the power vacuum in the Ottoman legacy regions. Plus, it was tackling PKK terrorism issue inside the Turkey as well as outside, namely north part of Iraq. Therefore, there was one potential option for Turkey to use its military over neighbors, demands and threats. For instance, the PKK leader Öcalan was residing in Syria and once chief of general staff of Turkey in the Hatay, the bordering city with Syria, has threatened Syria that if Syria won't deliver terrorist leader to Turkey, Turkey would invade Syria. Aftermath of this threat, Öcalan was escaped to several countries and was caught in the Nairobi. Actually, Öcalan, the leader of PKK, Öcalan was in the Greek embassy. That's why Turkey is, due to the threatening neighbors by its hard power, Turkey often called post-Cold War warrior. Problems around proximity of Turkey is quite abundant. Iraqi invasion in Kuwait, later on Gulf War led by US to stop Iraq, created extra difficulties such as economic consequences for Turkey because to have embargo against Iraqi government against Saddam Hussein, Turkey joined embargo program to stop function of the Kirkuk-Yumurtalık oil pipeline, which carrying oil from Iraq to Eastern Mediterranean port of Turkey. Gulf War had another impact over Turkey that the thousands of Kurds have moved to Turkey as refugees. That time, President of Turkey, Turgut Özal, perceived Gulf War as an advantage to show the West that afterwards of dissolution of Soviet Union, Turkey's importance for the West did not vanish. On the contrary, still it is very vital. Therefore, Turkey led coalition to use Turkey's airspace and the Incirlik base in Adana to attack Saddam Hussein troops. After 9/11, as you can see, the problems are huge, a lot. After 9/11, war on terrorism has introduced by US and Iraqi invasion, we can call it the second Gulf War. The Iraqi invasion followed fight against radical Islam was not bought by Turkey, and the Iraqi invasion added several more problems to the Turkey's existing geopolitical complexities and issues. This is not the ending, though. In 2008, there was a war between Georgia and Russia. I'm keeping very short. And then in 2011, there were Arab Spring had severe impact on Turkey and its geopolitics that apart from having over 5 million refugees, the economy was drastically impacted and the security threats multiplied. And presence of the PKK remain with significant increase and new threats have emerged such as Daesh. And in 2014, there was war between Ukraine and Russia. Eventually, it resulted in annexation of Crimea by Russia. So what we have now? We have several old and brand new problems in the vicinity of Turkey. As you can see, Turkey was surrounded by wars, civil wars, dictatorships, if not countries with low economic performance or having economic crisis. And
let me please interrupt you. Okay, 5 more minutes.
Okay, I'm gonna finish very soon. And the plus very recent war between Azerbaijan and Armenia. So this is the Turkish version. Sorry for that. But this funny illustration can show that the very clear picture about Turkey's geopolitics and the Turkey's situation. And you can see Turkey is right in the middle of the all kind of crisis. So the results. External factors have decisive role on geopolitics of Turkey. Turkey is located in very sensitive region. This and the conflicts, civil wars, and any kind of problems which were occurred are exactly where Turkey wants to be influential. Therefore, in order to prevent or tackle the security problems, Turkey needs very strong army. Another fact that these areas are the big power competition areas. That's why this creates another problem for Turkey. Internal factors of Turkey are depending on the conjuncture. If there is peace, Turkey is using its soft power and try to maintain the peace. But if there is any sort of conflict around Turkey, then Turkey is changing its soft power attitude to hard power. A very well-known example of this is the Arab Spring. Before Arab Spring, Turkey had very fruitful relations with almost all Arab world, especially Middle Eastern countries. But after the Arab Spring, Turkey was forced to tackle security threats by conducting military operations in Syria. That's all for now. I hope I cover. I think that the discussion part, I'm going to give answers of the questions. Thank you for all. Sorry, my phone is ringing.
Yes, thank you so much. And instead of the ladies first call, please, a lady, finally, lastly, please start and proceed.
Thank you very much. Before I start, I kindly ask you to look at your camera, whoever wants to participate in a photo, because we can use it later after the presentation. And we need the screen not to be shared by our previous presenter, please. Murat, are you sharing your screen?
Next to the, yeah, that's one. Thank you.
Yes, okay, great. Okay, so look at your camera, 3, 2, 1. All right, I'm just doing the photo now, and I will tell you something like a continuation of the presentation that we already heard. So I will be speaking about the relations between Russia, Turkey, NATO, and the EU in the Black Sea region. And maybe this is why I'm last, because it's just natural to have these two topics one after the other. I'm trying to share my content now. Do you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Yes, excellent. Okay. So initially I thought that I would be speaking mostly about the Black Sea Economic Cooperation Organization, which is a unique form of cooperation between Russia and Turkey, as normally in history they were rivals in the Black Sea region. But instead I decided to tell you a bit more about how the relations of competition and conflict developed. So the structure of my presentation is starting with introduction, then I'll explain the context of the Black Sea region, followed by the research question, aims, methods, and conclusion. The context of the Black Sea region, as we just have seen, is full of security crisis and international conflicts, those including Transnistria in Moldova, Crimea in Ukraine, Russia, but also Lugansk and Donetsk in Ukraine, Russia, and in Georgia, Russia, we have Abkhazia and South Ossetia. Between Armenia and Azerbaijan, we have Nagorno-Karabakh. So around them, the countries which are not in conflict right now are Turkey, Russia itself, and the EU countries, Bulgaria and Romania. The strong competitors around the Black Sea are Russia, NATO, Turkey, and the EU. And the research question that I will address is, how are the security crises related to post-Cold War zones of influence in a broader historical rivalry context? So the aim of my current presentation is to discover the puzzle of competition cooperation patterns after the Cold War, but also to locate it in the wider historical context. Therefore, I use three methods: historical overview, number two, comparison of patterns for competition cooperation, and number three, the case study of Black Sea Economic Cooperation Organization. Method number one, I look at the Black Sea before, during, and after the Cold War. So as you can see, this part here, which I'm pointing, is the Black Sea, and the first registered interest was from the Roman Empire. Before this, there were the other tribes, but I'm not going to go that back in history. So first we had the Roman Empire, which covered the territory down of the Black Sea. And afterwards, we had the Byzantine Empire, which was covering again the southern territory of the Black Sea. Then we had also the Mongol Empire, which was, here is the Black Sea, so it was in the northeast territory of the Black Sea. I'm showing you this in order to emphasize how many different geopolitical interests were going through the centuries over the territory of the Black Sea. So here is the Ottoman Empire, which lasted long and recently, and it covered the territory all around the Black Sea at some point of its development. Then we move to the time period during the Cold War, when the Soviet Union and NATO were the two largest contradicting powers. And here is the Black Sea. We can notice that it's almost equally shared, the territory. So the northern part is in the Russian influence, in the Soviet Union, and the southern part is in the US influence, the NATO territory. Here are the NATO member states, including their year of joining the NATO. And here is the Black Sea. As we could see, currently, this is also here Turkish part. So currently, the northern part of the Black Sea is not NATO members, while the southern part southwestern part are NATO members. So the basis of my claim is that the reason for conflicts around the Black Sea is the contradiction between continuation of the Soviet Union and NATO, or continuation of the contradiction between US and Russia relations. So my claim is that those countries which are still not part of the NATO or the EU are those who are the most vulnerable, because NATO and the EU are trying to attract them as member states, while Russia is not ready to accept such an idea. Here is the Black Sea again, and this is the map of after the Cold War, NATO members and Russia. Here you could see that Russian interests are spread also around the Baltic, but also here where the Turkish interests are spread in the southern Caucasus. Then if we look at the European Union, which is not military, but still it is a zone of Western influence, the member states which are around the Black Sea, those are Romania, Bulgaria, and they successfully entered in the European Union in 2007, and in 2004 they entered NATO. So even though previously they might have been part of the Soviet or Turkish influence, at the current moment they are part of the Western influence as being both NATO and EU members. Currently, this is the territory of Russia, and the Black Sea is only very far in its corner, so it's not the core of its strategic interest itself. But if we consider the post-Soviet zone of influence, including also Ukraine and the Southern Caucasus, those being Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan, this means that Russia is still interested in continuing its influence in this territory. And here is contemporary Turkey, which we have already seen. I would like to highlight why the Black Sea is very important for Russia and Turkey at this moment. As you could see, the Black Sea is landlocked, and it has access to the Mediterranean Sea through the controlled by Turkey two straits. Those are the Dardanelles and the Bosphorus. So Turkey has the right to allow which ships, including military ships in case of need, but also economic ships and all kind of ships could enter to the Black Sea through these two straits. So for Turkey, the control of these straits is very important. But why is it so important for Russia? For Russia, also the access to the Mediterranean Sea could be accomplished through here, because Russia has direct access on the Black Sea, and it could go through the Turkey-controlled straits directly to the Mediterranean and then to the World Ocean. So this is of key importance for Russia, but there is even another thing which I'm going to show here. This is the Azov Sea. It is also landlocked, and it has direct access to the internal territory of Russia through the Don River. So in case of a war, if the NATO ships, let's say, start from the Black Sea and they try to go to the internal Russian territory, the most strategic important part for Russia is the control of this strait here, which is called Kerch Strait. Therefore, Russia needs to keep not only the Russian side of it, but also the Crimean side of it, which was Ukrainian, but now Russia tries to keep it under its own control. From this perspective, if Russia sees NATO as the enemy, and if Russia allows the NATO ships to go through this Kerch Strait, then it would endanger its internal territory in case that the NATO ships attempt to attack. Of course, this is just in case that there is attack of NATO. We do not know whether this is going to happen, but for the strategic planning of the security strategy of Russia, it's very important. So after Turkey, I would like to share with you some of the patterns of competition cooperation around the Black Sea, because as you have seen, a lot of actors are involved and a lot of actors are interested in it. between Russia and Turkey, there were historical wars over the centuries. We had the Ottoman Empire and Soviet Union as the longest lasting entities, with the core governance controlled by Russia or Turkey. And the most surprising thing is that those two competitors united in after the end of the Soviet Union in the Organization for Black Sea Economic Cooperation. As you have seen, they both are strategically interested in the access through the Azov and Black Sea to the Mediterranean and the World Ocean. So this is one of the reasons why they searched for this unity. But the other reason is that both of them, as regional leaders and competitors, would not be very welcoming the idea of Western presence, and they were trying to stop such Western presence by their own unity. The next competition cooperation pattern that we see is between Russia and EU-NATO. As mentioned, Bulgaria and Romania joined NATO in 2004 and the EU in 2007. But as Georgia made its first steps towards NATO, there was a crisis in 2008. As Ukraine made its steps towards the EU, Russia provoked a crisis in 2014. And of course, Crimea and Kerch Strait were of strategic importance, as already explained. So it's very curious why the Black Sea Economic Cooperation Organization indeed started existence. How it looks like. It is assessed by scholars as a loose cooperation platform, and the aim of it is assessed as a platform to foster communication between hostile countries. Because in normal conditions, the hostile countries, of the smaller ones, not Russia and Turkey, but the Caucasus, for example, would not cooperate if it is not forced. Why the countries are hostile is another question, and it is due to the historical rivalry of the hegemons, but it is also because of strong nationalistic ideas within them. And the successful areas of cooperation in this Black Sea Economic Organization cooperation are those related to economic, climate, education and culture, and energy issues. However, those non-possible for cooperation areas are the related to military action. And the most contemporary initiative of the EU, which is in a way continuing the idea of regional cooperation, is the Three Seas initiative, which unites the Black Sea, Baltic Sea and Ionian Sea. Previously, the EU attempted to be present in the region with the Danube strategy and the Black Sea strategy synergy, and both of them did not flourish, as did not flourish as well the Black Sea Economic Cooperation. So how will it develop in the future? It depends on the cross-cutting contemporary interests between the involved actors. As we have seen, NATO and the EU are the military power alliance of the West, while Turkey is present in NATO, but bearing in mind the fact that Turkey and NATO have been competitors, we do not know for how long this will continue. Russia and the West maintain rivalry, as well as Turkey and Russia maintain rivalry and cooperation. Turkey was EU candidate, but this was at some point not developed, so whether it would continue, we do not know yet. And the dependent regional states, those who are in conflict, have the choice to be affiliated either to Russia, to Turkey, or to the West in their foreign policy movement. But any of these choices brings potential for a conflict, which would be raised from any of the other two regional hegemons. So the EU membership and NATO membership could be related, could be perceived as a threat by Russia, and maybe this is the reason for conflict. But maybe just the foreign policy narratives need to be changed of all these hegemons, Russia, Turkey, the EU and the West. And it actually depends on us how we will develop the future. The limitations and recommendation of this study is that it is limited to the historical development of the rivalry patterns around the Black Sea. And as the next research, I would suggest the elements of contemporary power competition to be measured and to be defined, because spreading influence in the past was measured in the alliances around the Soviet Union and around NATO. But nowadays, the nuclear power is not the strongest asset. So we have a combination of hard power, soft power, sharp power, information. So the power instruments need to be clarified. And this is what I'm doing in my PhD dissertation. Thank you very much for your attention. And I am ready to answer your questions.
Thank you so much. And Csaba, I don't know if we should merge the final two sections or parts, the discussion on this panel and your closing remarks, or
yes, we have some 10-15 minutes for discussion.
Okay.
Now, and then when that is completed, then I will have my closing remarks, which is not more than 5 minutes or even less.
Okay, then the floor is yours, and of course that of the audience. So please feel free to ask those questions to each other, to comment on each other's lectures. Yes. I think it's very interesting that in this sort. Yeah.
No, Neli.
No. I wouldn't like to take the floor because I have so many opportunities to talk. So.
Okay, just a quick question to Murat. I didn't know that Stalin has territorial claims in the eastern part of Turkey. Before NATO was joined, Turkey was joining NATO. Was there any possibility to get those territories, or any armed conflicts about that, or it was just a claim on paper? Thank you.
You are muted.
Yeah. I'm going to answer now. I think I don't remember exactly whom he was meeting, but it was addressed to some leaders in Great Britain, or I'm not sure about leader, but this territorial claim is a fact. It's real. In my presentation, I think I have resources. If you are so much interested, I can send you a link. Yes, in overall, this is real claim, and this was one of the main reasons why Turkey had to sided with NATO, because at that time there was potentially there was no way to protect herself.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Next question, because the time is just running, so I would suggest that we take every second or minute and this opportunity that you can reflect on each other's work. Neli?
Yes, thank you. I have a question for Murat. Did you explore the different stages of the Ottoman Empire and how it coped with its foreign policy challenges? And maybe you could compare this to the contemporary foreign policy of Turkey. Mm-hmm. And second, what do you think about the neo-Ottomanist ideas of Turkey? Thank you.
For your neo-Ottomanism. For your first question, my answer, I haven't made research, very detailed research, at least about the Ottoman Empire's geopolitics. But currently, I have read a book about the geopolitics that the Suat İlhan, the Turkish author of this book, was divided Ottoman history into geopolitics from historical perspective. That's why what you said in terms of interests, conflict interests areas or areas of interest between Russia and Turkey were present at that time too. As you mentioned, Black Sea hegemony. After taking control of Crimea, Ottoman Empire became the hegemon power in the Black Sea. But for instance, for today, it's not the case yet, even though Turkey's Black Sea Navy is quite developing to counter Russian Navy in the Black Sea. But yes, for later on, I think in the upcoming years, like if we divide 5, 10, 15 years, there will be more competition in the Black Sea, because if you check the military technology of Turkey, it's improving in any field, building new navies, building new submarines and UAVs and etc. For the second question, what I am thinking about neo-Ottomanism, it's what I know is that the Ahmet Davutoğlu, former prime minister and foreign minister of Turkey, and he was before these positions, he was advisor of the ruling government of Turkey. He denied this claim. Officially, from Turkey, no one claimed that Turkey is pursuing neo-Ottomanism ideas. But what Turkey is doing and did is to influence former Ottoman Empire territories, try to influence in Ottoman legacy, you know, and these territories mostly these territories, for instance, the Middle East is not 100%, but 95%, 90%, let's say, the Muslim-dominated region. That's why it sounded like Turkey is pursuing neo-Ottomanism. I wouldn't call it as a neo-Ottomanism, because Turkey has very strong relations, very strong ties with the Serbia, which is not a Muslim country. I hope I answer your question. From government's perspective back then and nowadays, they didn't call it as a neo-Ottomanism, and no one would do it, because you are from Bulgaria. If I tell you that I am a Minister of Foreign Affairs and I will pursue neo-Ottomanism ideas, you will be so much offended. You know, when you are thinking logically, it's not practical. It brings a lot of bad memories for the countries or the people who live in former Ottoman territories. You know, that's why even with that much limited knowledge and background, I wouldn't call it neo-Ottomanism. And then how the political elites could call it, or would call it, or they did call it neo-Ottomanism. That's why from their perspective and from my perspective, from my point of view, it's not pragmatic to call it. It wasn't.
Okay, I have a question to HAWN, if I may. Fine. I liked your presentation, which was really a very good analysis of the problem, and it was also very challenging, and also you quite convincingly argued for your position that Yeltsin was not a Democrat. Then my question is, how would you describe the difference between Yeltsin's non-democratic regime with today's Putin's non-democratic regime? How do you see the differences?
I think the biggest difference is that Yeltsin never had a grand vision or a grand idea of what he wanted for Russia or Russia's place in the world. He wanted personal power, and he was an excellent politician. He was very good at acquiring that. There's a very famous answer in his memoir, which was written by someone who was very pro-Yeltsin, describing him and many of his close associates right after Gorbachev's resignation, essentially having drinks in Gorbachev's old office, and essentially asking each other, what do we do now? And they're looking at the map like, oh, we control all of this, but they had no idea what to do. And if you look at Yeltsin throughout that 93 period and in his subsequent administration, he was very tactical. He lurched from one crisis, from one confrontation to another, but there was no grand plan, and he certainly never thought out what he was going to do. He trained as a construction worker, as a builder. He was not trained as a lawyer or a philosopher. Might have legitimately thought at first that if you just change the blueprints of society, then a new society will build itself. You know, it'll all be fine. So we're going to switch to free market capitalism. And Andrei Kozyrev recently admitted to me when I asked him about this at another conference that Gaidar, Yeltsin's chief economic advisor, was working out of an economics textbook. They had no idea what they were doing, and they were going with the very strict, very theoretical style of economics. And as I raised in one of my questions earlier, there was a huge push in the West at this time that economics are like physics. They apply everywhere. They're universal. So we are going to cut government spending. We're going to rein in deficits. We're going to apply a neoliberal Washington consensus economic plan. And in the long term, it to succeed in fixing Russia's economy, but it took 10 years, not 10 months, which is what they thought it would do. So I would say the Putin administration, by comparison, has a vision of what they want Russia to be, where they see Russia's place in the world, and Putin certainly has a vision of where he fits into Russia's history. He sees himself as the authoritarian strongman bringing Mother Russia back to greatness. Yeltsin, you know, he never saw past the next battle. So that would be my point of comparison.
Okay, thank you very much. That was very nice and very convincing again. So I give the word back to the chair.
And if I may, I would have a rather general question. If you could reflect a bit on the methodological challenges that each of you or any of you or some of you face in the context of your research. I don't know if these are identical or not. How much you talk about it, the three of you know each other quite well, I think. But it might vary from topic to topic. Please.
From a methodological point of view, my problem is that many of the people who were involved in the decisions I'm writing about are still alive or recently published their memoirs. So they're trying to justify what they did at the time, and they're trying to make themselves look the best. So it is a bit of a challenge because you can't always take these secondary sources at their word, and a lot of the primary source documents are currently inaccessible because even though they've been declassified and they're available, they're sitting in a box in Moscow or Washington out of my reach because they're, relatively speaking, so recent. So that has been a challenge. But what I found as a way to overcome that is talking to them and then reading memoirs of counterparts has been very illuminating. Kozyrev, for instance, is very critical of Talbot, but Talbot is very critical of Kozyrev. And through that and comparing it with media reports and people who did not maybe have as much of a stake in it, a clearer picture starts to emerge. So.
And do you have the opportunity to cooperate with colleagues in Moscow, fellow PhD students that might help you to get access to these archives?
I'm still in the first year of my PhD program, so I haven't had the opportunity to build those kind of connections. I'm hoping to in the future, but with the travel restrictions and the general hostility of Americans, it's proving somewhat difficult. My supervisor's actually been trapped in Russia for 9 months, so he can't fly. He can't fly back to the UK. So we're day by day.
Okay, thank you so much. Who's the next?
I may say few things about methodological issues. I am conducting qualitative method and primary sources based on primary resources and the speeches and etc. The problem with the geopolitics I faced lately is that the geopolitics is like some creature, you know. It was born and it's evolving and there is no limit. When you analyze any geopolitical issue, and when you investigate something, always some new thing emerge or pop up. That's why there is no limit for geopolitics. For example, now the influential authors are talking about space geopolitics, which is again growing. New countries emerging, new countries are developing space technologies, and etc. This is I think the biggest challenge I faced, I would say. Thank you.
But you obviously don't need to consider all these definitions or the evolution of the definition, only refer to it, that it's a complex situation, but which might be relevant, I think, if the digital dimension of geopolitics is taken into consideration, because that's a living something, it's a living problem, and I think, and obviously inclusion is into the analysis, especially if you are in the first or second grade of your studies, then it can still be considered because it's obviously there.
Yeah.
Neli, Shimon?
Yes, for me, the purpose of today's research and presentation was to identify the roles of the EU, Russia, and Turkey and NATO in the Black Sea region. So it's because I'm trying to make analysis on the situation right now in my PhD research, but it's impossible if I do not clarify the roles between competition and cooperation, alliances and rivalry between these actors, because it changes over time and it could continue changing in the future. So we can spotlight for today, but for tomorrow we do not know whether it will be the same. So this is difficult for me to explain.
Yes, especially if you think or consider the relationship between cooperation and rivalry or confrontation, because they can go hand in hand and can be considered as two sides of the same coin, or as alternative options, binary options. And I think the end result, or if you try to apply it, it's going to be different depending on whether you treat them as you know, ideas belonging to each other or ideas that should be separated. If you understand what I mean. Because
yes,
there are various theories. Is it an either or phenomenon, or we should interpret it as having a more dynamic relationship between these two terms or sides of coin.
Yes, and this is why I decided to focus on the areas over which they meet. So when I have the area, I can see in this, like, is it military, is it economic, is it youth, what it is, and they either meet or they confront on the area, because it differs on the different sub-areas, like elements.
Thank you so much, and Shimon, yours is the last statement, and then I would.
Thank you. For me, it's most challenging how to put into the context of international theories, because, as the other said, cooperation and conflict, and I can use like realist theories, and inside the realist theories like neo-realist, and inside there is a new subcategory, and there are events, there are actors, and how to clarify which one is the most proper one through its lens. I can see artifacts, but I'm mostly dealing with today's Arctic affairs in the United States emerging role, not Cold War issues completely. So I'm not dealing with archival research right now, but I'm planning to fill that research gap, because the Arctic, especially in Hungary, in the Cold War period, it's not covered. Professor Békés could support that, but I believe that's an uncovered territory of Hungarian Cold War science. Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I think we could finish and complete the panel. So please just go on with finishing and
I just
closing.
wanted to say thank you for these 4 presentations, lectures. Wish good luck with your studies, and thank you for your participation in this panel and in the entire conference.